While he was debating on whether or not to ask his questions, he remained silent. Though he said nothing, Dante's questions were deduced by Beatrice due to his facial expressions. The great Florentine poet debated on how a person could break his vow or break their vows when they were violently compelled to do so, and was wondering the validity of Plato's view that a soul ascends to a heavenly body after death. Beatrice declared that not even Moses or the prophets, St. John the Baptist or St. John the Apostle, or even Mother Mary herself has such an honor as these souls. The souls of the lunar sphere rejoiced eternally in uniform bliss. Their beauty, along with the collective beauty of the other planets, increased the glory of the highest of heavens. Instead of these souls being allotted to the moon, they were actually there to demonstrate a celestial allusion to Matthew 20:16. These lunar souls, which were transient, were the lowest of the souls in heaven, but were also the most prestigious. However, curiously, Dante did not see the face of the soul, but rather an image of the face of the soul. Essentially, Dante saw a form of a soul, but not the actual form. This was unlike how he had seen souls, the actual soul of someone in hell or on purgatory. This was not a novice concept, as the prophets saw the form of the Father, and Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar II saw the form of Christ. Furthermore, St. Paul compared the relationship between Christ and the church to a human form. Plato wrote in his dialogue entitled Timaeus that souls came from the stars and would return to the stars. The literal interpretation is that souls are not divinely created, but are made in stars or stardust and then return to being part of stars or to being stardust. This must be rejected, as it is a heresy. Therefore, it must be accepted in a figurative manner. In its figurative interpretation, a soul would have to come from heaven and would have the goal of returning there. Another figurative interpretation is that the stars, named the seven stars of purgatory, can lead, or namely the seven stars of purgatory can lead mankind back to his eternal home. Beatrice stated that though it was a dangerous thing to wonder, Dante would naturally grasp the reason how a person could break their vows when they were violently compelled to do so. Though they did not consent to the violation, the inconstant soul was still under the terms of his or her free will oath. By not rejecting the violence, the souls essentially were cooperating with the violence. St. Lawrence was told by the city's prefect to surrender the church's material goods meant to be distributed to the poor of the city. When he refused to submit to this violence, electing to preserve his will out of fear of the Blessed and Holy Trinity, he was martyred. Similarly, Gaius Marcius Scaevola tried to assassinate the Clusian king Lars Porsena on orders of the Roman Senate. When he failed to kill the king and instead killed the king's secretary, he was captured. He showed his iron will by roasting his own right hand in a sacrificial fire without showing any reaction. The king released him to Rome as he was more of a danger to himself than the king. Having said all this, Beatrice closed her lesson. However, given Picarda's testimony of her and Constance never ceasing in wanting to return to their covenants or their confidence, Beatrice acknowledged that it seemed to contradict what she had said just moments ago. The truth of the matter was that they never returned, not out of delay, but out of hope of preventing further violence. This desire to submit so that there was no more violence can be attested by reflecting on the legend of Alcmaeon of the Epigony. Erythiel had been bribed by Polonius into betraying her husband, Aphrenius, by sending him into battle. However, when Aphrenius learned about the betrayal that would result in his death, he ordered his sons, Alamon and Alphicus, to avenge him when they were of age. At the behest of his father's last wishes and to prevent further violence, Alcmaeon was the one to commit matricide. Will and violence at times commingle and yield to intolerable actions. Beatrice then went on to say that when Picarda spoke of will, she meant absolute will. However, Beatrice told Dante that she was speaking of conditioned will. Absolute will is conditional and incorruptible, while conditioned will is conditional and corruptible by circumstances. This revelation cleared Dante's confusion, and he thanked her in an elaborate and extensive address. Yet he questioned something that he wasn't clear on. In the court of heaven, are good works enough to compensate for broken vows? This inquiry caused Beatrice to look at the Florentine poet with divine love, which in turn caused his eyes to become downcast.